All right, guys, let's do it. We are back once again for a midweek Wednesday night pod. Welcome everyone to the Tripod, where generally we are breaking down every NRL or NFL game from a punting perspective, whatever's on at the moment. But the big news is that NBA kicked off today with the big doubleheader, so a lot of you guys that are NBA fans probably would have watched that one. A couple of really good games, actually, to start off the season. So we thought we'd just do a quick fire pod just on our initial thoughts on the season and where we see some value perhaps in various markets, and our picks for MVP and a few division winners, that kind of thing. So thought we'd get into the NBA spirit with a quick pod. Jacob, how are you, mate? Did you get to watch a couple of games today?
Yeah, I did, and we got a couple of pretty good games to start the season. And we, people know us from NRL, and we do a weekly NFL pod, but we do love the NBA as well. And one of the great things about NBA is you get action every day once the season starts. And a couple today, but then you'll have a minimum of 2 games usually. Some days you get a full slate of games. It's exciting. It gives us something to punt on. We want to try and make money where we can, and we've got some initial thoughts. And on top of that, season 2019-2020 shaping up to be an all-time season because, 100%. Of course, there's such a dramatic, summertime with a lot of marquee names moving clubs, and you went from the last 3 or 4 years where you knew who was going to win the title.
Yep.
Of course, it didn't actually shape up that way last June, but now we've got it so open. All these teams have superstar duos, and there's arguably 9 or 10 teams that could conceivably win the title. And on that note, the Toronto Raptors are the NBA champions.
Yep.
Let that sink in for a second. That actually happened in June. And I just want to go back to, in the playoffs, Eastern Conference Finals, the Bucks were the best team all season in the East. The Bucks were up 2-0, took care of business against the Raptors in the first 2 games. Game 3, very tight, 1-possession game, final shot kind of thing, overtime in Game 3, double overtime. The Raptors were on a knife edge. If the Bucks win that game and go up 3-0 in that series, there is just absolutely no way that the Raptors then come back and win that one from 3-0 down. In fact, no one ever has. That's how close they could have not even made the finals. Then they got to the finals. Then Kevin Durant, was out and came back and got hurt again, worse. And Klay Thompson, a lot of things had to break on top of Kawhi Leonard leading the way and playing out of his mind and a lot of other guys playing at their peak for them to win the title. And I guess I just thought that's worth mentioning too, because no matter what we're going to, break down and try and predict, it's so hard to predict because one injury can shake everything up in the NBA. But that's part of, the excitement that's making it very open.
Oh, 100%. And to win a title, not only do you have to have a good team, a healthy team, good injury luck going into the finals, but you have to get lucky in some games as well. And you know that more than anyone, Jacob. You were on OKC a few years back when they were up 3-1 against the Warriors. You were ahead of the curve. You said to me, look, this team's going to win this year, or you got ridiculous odds on them winning. And, up 3-1, need a little bit of luck, couldn't get it. That's the way it goes.
And the very next year, 2 players that actually were underrated, Kevin Durant, people didn't realize how good he was. Turned out next year was the best player on the planet.
Yep.
What did Russell Westbrook do? Averaged a triple-double, won the MVP. But somehow when they were together, they couldn't achieve, their ceiling. And that's part of it as well, chemistry and being able to, get the best out of the squad that you have. And there's some new look squads that we can't wait to break down.
100%, mate. Let's get into our first topic here. We'll run in, we've got a few topics down here. We'll try and run in order. Look, I thought we'd go through a few division winners first, where we see some value here. How many have you got there, Jacob?
You'd throw whatever at me. I've written down who I think's going to win each of the 6 divisions.
Oh, you've got each of the 6. Okay, interesting. I've throw me your best value one out there. I've got 3 that I think are value here. You throw me out your best value one, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so obviously we're previewing the season after there has been, a couple teams have played 1 game.
Yep.
But despite what we saw today, I guess for value, because I've picked 4 favourites out of the 6 divisions.
Okay.
For longer odds, let's go the Lakers at $3.25
Good.
to win the Pacific.
I've got them on my list of 3 as well. You shoot
Okay,
first.
and I'm going to say, because they've got, 2 absolute superstars, everyone knows that, LeBron James and joined by Anthony Davis, but they're fresh. LeBron, he didn't make the playoffs last year. When was the last time LeBron didn't play in the playoffs? He didn't have any, Team USA duties. Anthony Davis was put on, restricted minutes when he, told him he wanted out in New Orleans. So he barely even broke a sweat last season. He didn't do anything in the offseason except film Space Jam with LeBron. I mean, I like a couple of the additions. I like Avery Bradley. Danny Green obviously gets it done. Kuzma didn't play today, but he's an up-and-coming star. And then they've got some other wacky blokes that we can talk about later. But
very wacky.
Of course, the other thing about that division is that you're getting decent odds because they share the division with the Clippers. And the Clippers are no joke. And the Clippers are going to be sensational this year. But the difference is, I suppose, Paul George had surgery on both shoulders, won't play the first couple months of the season. Kawhi, you don't know on any given night will he be sat out. They're going to have to learn to kind of play together with these guys. And they've got their sights focused firmly on success in the playoffs. They don't really care about home court. And you don't need to get a better record than the Lakers for home court when you play at the same arena anyway. So that's my logic there for Lakers paying over $3.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I should add, we haven't chatted about these. I just told Jacob, a few topics to talk about. And look, I had the Lakers too at $3. You're right, and you might even be able to get a little bit higher than that today.
I saw $3.25.
There you
$3.25.
go, $3.25, and you might even be able to get higher than that after they lost today. But you're absolutely right. The exact same things written down. Look, Anthony Davis had the biggest rest of his life last season. 56 games, sure he played, but limited minutes in a lot of those games. LeBron James, 55 games last season, and when's the last time, like you said, that he didn't have to grind his way all the way to a championship game and carry a team? It's been a long, long time. And look, just from a mental perspective, LeBron's got to be thinking. I mean, we all know that he's thinking this, but he's got to be thinking, this is the fucking year. Like, this is the year. I have, I'm fresh. Anthony Davis is fresh. Who knows how long those guys are going to stay healthy or at the peak of their careers. But, I mean, Anthony Davis, as we know, is injury prone. But, look, LeBron looked fresh today. I know they didn't get the win. But on the flip side, like you said, the main competition in that division is the Clippers. And, look, I have... like you said, the Clippers will be thereabouts, and they are NBA championship favourites, and rightly so, because of the talent on that team. But are we sure that Paul George, once he comes back, are they saying 10 weeks, that he can stay healthy? He's been very, very injury-prone throughout his career. And not only that, I think you mentioned it as well, Kawhi coming off the hardest season of his career as well. Not only did he hobble his way through the playoffs last year, but he played a record amount of minutes in the playoffs for anyone in history, and that takes its toll on your body. So I'm not entirely sure if he's going to be healthy for the entire season. Not only that, whether they'll limit his minutes. Shoot for your number 2 value pick there, Jacob.
Well, the only other plus money's picks, I actually said Orlando Magic in the Southeast, and that's really a fade on. That's a fade on the Miami Heat. Speaking of how we haven't discussed this, I thought just to make this pod even more exciting, we agree so far, but if there's any strong disagreements, we can arrange a side bet as well for the season. We've already got one on Ben Simmons made threes that people can see in our group.
Tell them the bet. You might as well tell them the bet quickly.
Well, someone posted in our group, the beauty, of the Tripod Punters Tips Forum, people post up tips and they think it's value and then you can debate it. And someone found Ben Simmons paying $2.75 to make 10 threes or more this season. So you got 80 games to make 10 threes. And I liked the logic because, of course, he hasn't shot, the three at all. He literally had no makes from maybe 20 attempts in his first 2 years. And literally all those attempts are like half-court heaves, end of the shot clock, where they had to just toss it at the rim. And the truth is he's a terrible shooter and he shoots with the wrong hand. But the way that defenses defend him, the way that modern NBA is played, if you can just even have a bare bones three that can keep teams honest, it could really be a game changer. There's talk he practiced all off season. I have watched a couple of video clips of him making it. Not that, you take that with a grain of salt, obviously. But, he made one preseason. If he's attempting them, my logic was he only has to attempt, one a game and make a quarter of them. And that would still be, well over 10. So you took the other side of that one.
I took the other side of it. And like you said, the beauty of the group, someone posted that one up, 10 or more threes at $2.70. And almost immediately after, someone posted up for Ben Simmons to make 0 to 10 threes at $2.40. So just one of the best arbitrage bets you could ever make in that one. So yeah, I took the other side. So we've got half a dime riding on this one. Jacob's taken the over 10.5 threes for the season, and I've taken the under.
On the note of Ben Simmons, do you
Sorry.
ever pick in that division, in the Atlantic? Are you going with Philly to win that division?
I think they should be too good in that one.
I will say I like the Boston Celtics as the third best team in the East. I think it's quite clear. And, if you're talking about division winners, of all the divisions, there's only one true lock for me, and that is the Bucks. They're 100% going to win their division, but you're going to get like $1.12. But if you want to throw that in a future multi, I would.
Yep.
Whereas I'm looking at Rockets $1.33. I mean, that's not a lock, is it?
No, that's definitely not
Philly,
a lock.
I can't call Philly a lock because I just mentioned the Celtics. But
Yes,
which
very
division
true.
you want to talk about now?
Let me shoot back to the Magic, because I had the Magic written down as my second favourite division winner. Look, they won the division last year. They made the playoffs. And let's just say this. I think they will improve. That team is full of young guys that should improve this year. Aaron Gordon, Vucevic, Evan Fournier is not super young, but I mean they've got and Fultz now, who
Mo Bamba
and Mo Bamba from the draft. So I mean they've got a young team that's on the improve, and the Heat are the favourites in that Southeast division. And look, yes, all the talk has been around Jimmy Butler, but at the end of the day, Jimmy Butler hasn't shown me anything in the last couple of years that tells me that he can lead a team and be a true leader, a true number one on a team. So I have severe doubts about that Miami Heat team. And look, outside of Jimmy Butler and Dragic, I think that team is relatively devoid of talent, honestly. So I think the Magic will be much improved. And at $2.40 or $2.50 or whatever you can get them for, that's not too bad. Let me get to my favourite division.
Can I just add to that? Yeah, I would agree the value just because of a fade on the Heat. Like Jimmy Butler gone, I don't like him. And there was a false narrative that came out of Philly last year that in the playoffs, he was actually the guy who took over. But I watched every one of those Philly games. I didn't really see that. I thought that was exaggerated. I thought Ben 100%. Simmons was still their number one creator when push came to shove. I thought Jimmy shied away. Like a guard who can handle the ball and shoot a little bit from the outside is always going to end up with the ball in a lot of key possessions. Right. But I didn't think Jimmy was the man. What I find weird about him is I'm all about winning. I just want to win. Yep. I just go into a team and I get frustrated if they don't want to win. And then he chose the Heat, a side that really has no chance of contending this year, and he could have chose a number of other teams that did. And you talk about like chemistry, they got Dion Waiters on this team as well. And lost Richardson, which is a big loss too. So that's why I think they're not value and why the Magic are.
100%. Let me just say this: when you go to multiple teams and shit happens at multiple teams, maybe, just maybe, it's you.
Chicago, T-Wolves.
Just maybe it's Jimmy Butler. So let me get to my number one. I like the Nuggets. The Northwest, $2.40. Look, I think everyone's sleeping on the Nuggets a little bit. I understand that they're like, $10 or $11 to win the championship. So no one's, no one's sleeping on them. But I do think they're coming into this season a little bit underrated. Look, they won 54 games last year. They've had limited roster changes. They've still got Jamal Murray, who's young, signed a very big contract. He's on the improve. I think he could have an even better season than he did last season. You've got one of the best centers in the league in Jokic. So, they could have won the fucking NBA last year. I know we had a bet. I'm not going to get into it. They got unlucky to lose to Portland. And honestly,
our bet was paying $25,000 for the Nuggets to meet the Raptors in the finals.
Correct.
We got it half right.
Fucking
and not only,
unbelievable.
Obviously, people say the Nuggets didn't get close. They lost in Game 7 at home to Portland.
Yep.
They had that game, but McCollum, went out of his mind and shot like 38 points and beat the Nuggets in a close game, and the Nuggets led that game by like 17. And I tell you, the Nuggets would have done a lot better against the Warriors with no KD
100%.
than the shitty Blazers who fell into the Western Conference Finals and then got swept. So we actually weren't far away, but that's the story of our lives. But you got any more on the Nuggets? People should know as well, full disclosure, the Nuggets is my team.
Yeah,
I try to be impartial,
right.
But and I picked the Nuggets to be the number 2 in the West last year behind the Warriors, and they did finish with the second best record last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just say one more thing. I guess the obvious, the favorite in that division is the Utah Jazz. And look, I even said last year when, everyone was talking up the Jazz, I said, hang on a second, are they really that good? And look, they have. I know there's been a lot of talk about adding Mike Conley in the offseason from the Grizz, but really, you're getting another ball dominant player, and I mean Donovan Mitchell's going to be handling the ball most of the time, as we know. I still don't think that he's quite there yet in terms of leading a contending team. So I think that the Nuggets are the better team. I don't see any reason why Utah should be favored in this division just because of the Conley addition. I feel like having the two of them on the floor at the same time, sure, it might work, but I mean, they're both very ball-dominant players, and we'll get to other teams that, might have that issue as well coming into the season. But I just think everyone's sleeping a little bit on the Nuggets. They're going to be much improved, and, if they did, like you said, make the NBA championship, which they easily could have last year, a lot more people would have been talking about it.
Maybe we've got to go head-to-head, although I don't really want to bet against my team. Look, I tell you, it's very hard in the West. The West is stacked. I think there's a clear top 5. But just for regular season, I'm going to predict the Utah Jazz finish with the 1 seed. And I had the Denver Nuggets with the 2 seed.
Oh,
so
okay,
I'm not going to tear down the Nuggets.
Right,
if there's one, gripe, I'd say, like, can Jokic, stay on the floor for 82 games? He's a big guy that does, labor around a little bit. Although I'm with you that Murray can have a cracking season, and the Nuggets, especially at home, you don't want to bet against them. Sometimes teams will just mail that one in because the oxygen's a bit thin up there, and teams get behind it, it gets ugly. But for Utah, I think they should be the best defense in the league. I think I would pick like Quinn Snyder, a real opportunity to be coach of the year. I do think Mike Conley makes all the difference. But I think when you have two ball playing guards who can both shoot really well in Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley, then either one can play off the ball at times, and that's fine. And they got other players who can spread the floor, like our man Joe Ingles.
True.
And another pickup, you said they just got Conley, but what about, I hope I get this right, because there's 2 players like the same name, but Bojan Bogdanovic from the Pacers.
Yes.
That guy, a dead set scorer as well.
Yes.
And Gobert's going to be in the mix for Defensive Player of the Year. So by a shade, I have the Jazz ahead, so I wrote down the Jazz at $2.30 because it's, and I actually, just if we're in that division, Blazers, I'm going to have to say they have an off year. I think that, Nurkic, that gruesome injury, he'll still be a while away, and I'm not buying the Hassan Whiteside stock. And I just think if they get one injury to McCollum or Lillard, they could miss the playoffs. That's how stacked the West is. I think their chance was last year.
Oh, 100% it was. And you still have Nurkic, and I guess it's a little bit of insurance getting Whiteside, but whether Whiteside's an addition that's going to help you contend, I don't think so. Anything else you want to add, Jacob, before we get to overrated?
That's good for now for division value.
How many overrated teams you got there?
Oh, about 3 or 4, 3.
All right, 3. I'll go first. I was going to say the Jazz, and I know that you just, it's good to go head-to-head sometimes, but there's been a lot of hype about the Jazz this year. And look, just from what I basically said before, a lot of off-season moves, obviously. You add Conley, Bogdanovic, Moutier, stuff like that. And whenever you have a lot of off-season moves, sometimes it does take a little bit to gel. One loss that you do have is Derek Favors, who's an absolute beast down low. And I think it will take a little bit of time for Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley to gel. They have had, a lot of years at their respective teams being the ball-dominant guard. So, I think it's going to have to be Conley that has to learn to play off the ball. But I think you're right, Jacob, in the fact that, I trust a guy like Conley to learn how to play off the ball a lot better than I'm going to trust someone like Russell Westbrook to learn to play off the ball. And we'll get to the Rockets later. Shoot.
Very high character guy. Well, 2 here that I've already touched on. And you talked about when you get new additions, it brings a lot of hype, but it doesn't instantly gel. So let's go with the Clippers, who got a win today, and I'm happy with that. But I still think you bet on them on, any given Thursday night, and then on Friday you find out Kawhi's not playing, and it'll take a little bit of time. As I mentioned, PG-13 is going to be a few weeks before he plays, and they're building for the playoffs, and they're the NBA favorites, so you're not going to get a lot of value on them. And the Heat, I already touched on the Miami Heat, that I think, chemistry, I don't know if they're going to be that great, and they're going to rely a lot on Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is I had Clippers as my number 1. Obviously, we saw what they did today, and we've spoken about them. You have Kawhi and PG-13. So, look, I think you're absolutely right. There's huge hype on the Clippers, and yes, they are the best team in the league, but that will take some time to mesh, especially because Paul George isn't starting for the first 10 weeks of the season. And, a lot of moving pieces there, and you kind of are getting in the way of that good Clippers chemistry that they had last year. I mean, that team was playing some really good ball, plus the fact that, getting Kawhi after what he did in the playoffs, everyone is going to want to bet on the Clippers. But
just to be clear, this is overrated on a nightly basis in the regular
Yes,
season. I don't think
yes.
they're overrated. When we get to our championship picks, it's a very different. This is what you got to separate.
Oh,
The chance
100%,
of success
100%.
in the playoffs versus winning on a nightly basis in the regular season are not the same thing. And
Yes.
yeah, like with Kawhi coming in, it's like, like when the Warriors added Kevin Durant, they won less games the following year. Sometimes
Yep.
it's hard you bring in a superstar. Before it was everyone putting in, trying to give 100%, and now you've got the superstar, you feel you've got to defer to them sometimes. So it can be tricky to navigate.
Yeah, 100%. I have one more team in the Rockets just on a nightly basis, like you said. I know that they add Westbrook, a lot of hype there, and I guess there are some people, worried about how that's going to mesh. But all in all, I think the general consensus on the Rockets is they have improved their team, and I think they have, most certainly, when you add, a top 15 guy in Russell Westbrook. But I have my concerns about this team, and especially in the first sort of quarter to half of the season, getting those two guys to mesh again. Because, look, I know that you're getting 2 out of the 3 of the guys that were on that awesome OKC team, but that was a team where, Russ was the ball dominant half and Harden sort of played off the ball. So I don't think that's going to be the case here. I mean, Harden has shown that he is an MVP caliber guy, playing as a ball dominant guard. And Russell Westbrook's going to have to do a lot of work learning how to play off of why am I forgetting his name in this very moment? James Harden.
James Harden.
Why am I?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ. But we've seen Westbrook try and play off the ball. It's not great. So look, this team might get it going towards the playoffs, but during the season, I think that's going to take a little while to kind of gel.
Well, I'll disagree with that because that's a pretty common thought about this team, that there's only one ball and they both have, historically high usage rates. But I think, you can offset the minutes to an extent, so you would always have one of the two on there. So if there's 48 minutes in a game and they're each playing like 35 minutes, then there's at least that 13-minute window each where they will be the only, they get to run the offense through them. And then, hey, of course, Harden can play off the ball. He's one of the best three-point shooters in the league. And when Westbrook's off the ball, he can go into the dunker role. He can try and offensive rebound. He can cut to the basket. And I think the X factor is, can Westbrook shoot the three, at over 30%? Because he'll get wide open looks on this team. And if he can just shoot it enough to keep teams honest. Now, people will say he's a horrible three-point shooter. He kind of is. But when he's played on a team where he was the only offense, he's, having to shoot them right at the end of the shot clock, jack up bad shots, contested shots. It's different in this offense. So I disagree that they're overrated. I still love both of those players. In fact, I have them as an underrated team.
Let's get to underrated.
Well, let's put Lakers and Rockets in the same bag. I have them both underrated. We both agreed that Lakers are good value to win the Pacific Division.
Yes.
My logic is just LeBron James, Anthony Davis, James Harden, Russell Westbrook. Those 4 superstar players seem to be a little bit on the nose, or they've copped a lot of criticism that they don't win.
Yep.
I mean, LeBron chose LA, didn't make the playoffs last year. People put that on him. Anthony Davis never had success. Harden again flamed out in the playoffs. Westbrook, same story. But I believe in all those guys. We've spoken enough about the Lakers, but with the Rockets, Eric Gordon is still a gun wing. I really like Capella as a big man.
Something happened
Even
to Eric
Austin
Gordon in
Rivers.
the finals. He just he lost his shot.
But yeah, he was fantastic last year, honestly. So I don't have the concerns. I actually think the Rockets are going to be hungry, and I think that replacing Paul with Westbrook is an upgrade. Even though he's not the shooter Westbrook is, he's just such the better athlete.
Oh yeah, 100% agree that Westbrook for CP is an upgrade, definitely. I just do think it'll take time to gel, but if they can get it right, this team can contend once again. You got any more underrated teams there, Jacob?
Yeah, let's go the Pelicans, especially pre-Zion. People will write them off. And I thought the fact that it was a good game. They lost in overtime today, and they lost by 8. So I bet I didn't see the line on that game.
It was
but
6.5 by close, and some people got 7, so pretty brutal.
Getting the Pelicans +7, they were never behind by 7 the whole game. In fact, they had a double-digit lead, and then it was a close game, and then it was tied. They could have lost by 1 basket. It goes to overtime, and it happens so often that then that underdog catching a lot of points, your handicap bet is decided on the final result, and they lost the game by 8.
I'll add to that. I
value.
found the Pelicans halftime, full time today at $5.50. I was gonna bet it, and then I didn't tell you, but I've twisted my ankle fucking terribly at indoor soccer. It's about the size of a fucking balloon. So I thought I got to go to the doctor this morning, and I forgot to put the bet on. And the whole game I'm watching it like, oh my god, they're up at half. Oh my god, they're up, by 5-6 late, and I would have been absolutely spewing if I got that bet on. But somehow I was at the doctor's going to different shit, and I forgot to put the bet on. So thank Christ.
Like, that's a bet on them to win. And, like, there was never really a moment in that game where you were certain they would win.
No,
but there
true.
were moments in that game where you were certain they would cover plus 6.5.
Yes.
Why do I like them, though? I like Lonzo. I still believe in him, quality player. Brandon Ingram, still improving. They picked up other guys like JJ Redick. Okafor, Favors you talked about before, even Hart from the Lakers. And then Drew Holiday and Etuan Moore are solid players. And when Zion does come back, and it sucks that he's not going to be there because, I can't wait to see how he goes in the NBA. He's, one of the most hyped superstars coming into the league. And he could be out quite a while. I'm hearing up to 2 months. But if they can still do okay in that time, then that team, I actually think they can make the playoffs. I think they're that deep. And since we talked about the Raptors, I actually had them as my last overrated team. So my reason for the Raptors being overrated is people think, oh, they still did okay last year without Kawhi. They're the NBA champions. Like, you take Kawhi off, they're not going to win the title, but they're still going to be around a top 4 seed. I don't see it. I see all these guys that poured everything, their heart and soul into last season, played amazing, and still needed a superhuman Kawhi all through the playoffs, and, a buzzer beater that hit the rim 4 times, and injuries and everything to win the title. So how do those guys squeeze that much juice out again, knowing that even if they push everything to the absolute limit, at best, they're going to win one playoff series? I could see it going the other way. I could see everyone lifting to play the Raptors because they are the NBA champions.
Right.
And I could also see them having trade bait, like sell high on a guy like Kyle Lowry, on a guy like Serge Ibaka, and start to rebuild again around Siakam and Anunoby. So I have the Raptors missing the playoffs. I mean, that's $4.50. And they won today, but that will only help with them potentially being overrated in my eyes.
Yeah, I think you're bang on the money, honestly. And I was watching the game today, and I was kind of saying, I think you've got Siakam on a max deal. I think Lowry is on a max deal as well. And neither of those players, I know that in today's NBA, it's a lot easier to get max deals. But, yeah, you're right. I really struggle to see how Siakam, I know everyone's kind of saying, Siakam's going to make the leap. I know he's most improved last year, all that stuff. And I know he scored 34 points today, which doesn't probably help my argument. But whether he can be, the number one option throughout a season, I have to see it to believe it, honestly, because I have my doubts. Let me get to a couple of underrated teams here that I like. I've obviously spoken about the Nuggets. I think they're coming in slightly underrated just because of what happened in last year's playoffs, and they'll be a little bit improved this year. But let's talk about the Warriors for a second here. Look, I think everyone is riding off the Warriors. KD gone, Clay injured until, they're saying February to March he's going to come back. But I'm sort of, let's say, not necessarily for on a day-to-day basis betting, but if I'm betting for an NBA championship here, I can get the Warriors, I think, in double digits. You've still got a top 3 player in the league in Steph Curry. You add D'Angelo Russell, who can score 30 on a nightly basis. Both those players, I think, will be fine playing off of each other. I have less concerns about either of those two players playing off the ball. Clay comes back, a couple months before the playoffs start. I know that
he definitely doesn't come back a couple months before the playoffs start. I mean, it's an ACL. They said absolute best case scenario is April, which would be when the playoffs start. And Steve Kerr actually said recently he's not expecting him back this year. So, I mean, in best case scenario, if you're talking about adding Clay, but I would be very doubtful on that. I mean, ACL, they say average recovery time is 330 days. He did it in June.
I know that. And, well, we got to think, I think, didn't Emmanuel Sanders fucking have the same injury, came back in 8 months? But I read today that Clay's dad came out and said March, if not February. So I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? But either way, I think
is an unknown.
I think everyone's sort of riding off this team. And yes, sure, they're not going to be as good as they were last year. But I think they have, some pieces there. And you saw, Draymond Green plays better when Kevin Durant isn't there. He gets more involved, and I think that certainly helps him. And the last one that I'll get to is the Oklahoma City Thunder. everyone is just heaping shit on them. They think it's going to be a tank season. I don't think it's going to be a tank season from the Thunder, especially early on. Yeah, sure, if they get themselves into like a 5-15 record, then sure, they might tank. But you lose Paul George, you lose Russell Westbrook. But I think signing Chris Paul, I think shows that, you don't necessarily want to tank this season. You have some good pieces there. I think Chris Paul brings some leadership to this Thunder team. You've got, Gallinari, Gilgeous-Alexander. You've got some pieces there that can actually play. It's not a terrible team. And I think especially early on in the season, I think you're going to find some value on them.
Give Steven Adams a shout-out for all the Cuzzy bros that are watching too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you have enough pieces there, not necessarily maybe to be a playoff team, but certainly a possibility. They're not going to be, a lottery team, let's say it that way, if they don't decide to be.
Hang on, if you're saying they're not going to be a lottery team, then you're saying they're making the playoffs, and the West is stacked. Oklahoma City is not making the playoffs.
A bottom two.
My response to those ones, they're going to be very interesting. I mean, what they want, I think obviously it's a full rebuild. They've got all these draft picks coming up, and the smartest move they can possibly make is to have a bad year, and so that their own pick, which they own, is also a really high pick. So they probably don't want to win games, because I look at the West, it's so stacked, and I said I think I have Portland missing the playoffs, let alone, Oklahoma City. I can't see how they can possibly get in. But they kind of want these guys in the shop window, like your Gallinaris, your Chris Pauls. They want them to play big minutes and to play well so that somebody might trade for them and they can get even more assets, because those are players that can contend now or can contribute to a contender right now. You don't really need them on this Oklahoma City because they're going a different path where you want to build around your Gilgeous-Alexander potentially. Right. And with the Warriors, yeah, I think it was such a sneaky good addition to get D'Angelo Russell. He really can shoot it. He made an all-star team for the first time last year. How they somehow kept Looney when everyone overpaid for every player in the offseason, but somehow they got Looney on a very decent contract. And he anchored their defense, and tough as nails. I don't like Draymond Green. I mean, you're right. He played
I don't
a lot
like
better.
him either.
He played up. But now they're going to lean on him a lot more without KD, but without Klay too. And if you're leaning on Draymond Green, how good is he going to be? And it's not really that I dislike the Warriors. It is more that the rest of the West is so stacked. So I actually have the Warriors going in as an 8th seed, just because I just see no depth. You got to mention the role players too. Iguodala, Livingston, those guys aren't on this roster either.
Correct.
So it's pretty skinny. But Steph will have a field day. He'll be in the MVP discussion. He could score 35 a night, and he'd probably be my pick for the scoring title. I have one more underrated team. Do you have any other underrated sides?
That's me. Done. Shoot.
All right, just one more to throw out there, and I'll put them in as the 8th seed in the East. It's the Atlanta Hawks, and it's really just a team that I just see good energy in this city. That they're really fun players. Yeah, you go around Ice Train in the new NBA, a guy that plays no defense but can make 10 threes on any night. You can win with that guy, and they traded up and they got Reddish and Hunter. Both in the top 10 of the draft. Those guys like John Collins is a really good up-and-coming big man. Kevin Huerter, even Jabari Parker is on this team. So in the East, which is not stacked like the West,
correct,
where you get a few cheap wins, and this team, I think, will be trying to win now and trying to build confidence amongst these young players. I like them as a fun team that will give you, your money's worth on any given night.
Yep, absolutely. Totally agree with you there. And I'll get on to the next question, which is your most fun team, or the best NBA League Pass team. If you had to subscribe to one team, you can only watch them on League Pass, who would it be? You mentioned that the Hawks will be a very fun team, and that would certainly be a candidate. I've got the Mavs in there. I think it's going to be a super fun team to watch this season. You've got, obviously, Luka Doncic, who's one of the most fun fucking players to watch ever. His handles are ridiculous. He can shoot the free from everywhere. And that was already a fun team to watch last year. And now you add Porzingis to the mix. I think that's going to be, a super fun team to watch. So I'll give an honorable mention to the Rockets, just because I just want to see what happens there. Look, if they gel, if Russ and Harden gel immediately, that is going to be one of the best teams in the West. But it's also would be a fun League Pass team as well, because if it doesn't gel, it could be a fucking it could be a train wreck. Not necessarily a train wreck, but a very interesting team to watch. That's for
Yeah,
sure. Who
no,
have you got?
The Rockets are a high variance team, and on that, like, if you want to bet them to win the title and you get good odds, I could see a best case scenario.
Oh,
But
for
if you're going to
sure.
bet them at $1.30 to win their division, I don't like that because
Right.
it could also
It could
go the other way.
capitulate,
So
yes.
don't take them in a short odds. Look, the great thing about this season, there's so many teams I want to watch, and yeah, Atlanta would be fun. But I'll go back to the team I already said. If there's one team I get to watch all season, it's the Lakers because I get to see LeBron. He's 36. He's not going to be in his prime forever, but he's like a fine wine. He's still going well. Anthony Davis, I've always loved him. The other reason is because they're not going to be great defensively. Like, yes, you've got AD there, but they've got a lot of deficiencies on the wings in terms of defense, so they'll be playing high-scoring games. You've got weirdos on this team. Your boy Dwight Howard is on this team. Who else? KCP, JaVale McGee is on this team.
Oh, my God.
And they should be, in exciting games, like in a lot of high-scoring shootouts. So it's an obvious pick. And I used to be a Laker hater. Like, I've been a Nuggets fan. The Nuggets kept getting knocked out of the playoffs by the Lakers when they had Kobe. I was a LeBron over Kobe guy. You had to pick a side in that. And I despise the Lakers and all the success that they had. But since they've been shit for a few years, and I just love LeBron James, like, and respect everything he's about and how good he is, that I've come full circle, and I'm happy to see that this team's successful because I do like LeBron and AD, and if there's value,
fresh.
I'll be betting on him.
He looked fresh today, I tell you. He looked all right. And that could be a really fun team. And if they get their stuff sorted, like, obviously they need to have some, they need to improve a little bit on defense from last year. But you're right, AD's going to give them some of that. And you see some of the comments, that these two players are making in the offseason. I think they will make each other better. Like AD's dropping shit to the media, like, oh yeah, look, like, we need to really be better on defense, especially, our leadership players need to step up in defense on a nightly basis and shit. Like, just like not as if it's a subtle jab, but it's like, I think both of those players will challenge each other and will make them each other better, which I think is certainly a good thing for that Lakers side. All right, Sakib, the big question: who's meeting in the finals? Who have you got winning the West, and who have you got winning the East?
Okay, so I said before I would have the Clippers with the 5th best regular season record, but it's really close in my top 5. So in that scenario, Rockets have a better regular season record. I had the Lakers winning that division, and I had Nuggets and Jazz. But I'll take the Clippers at $3.25 to win the West because when it comes to the playoffs, this team's scary on defense too. You saw Patrick Beverley today. Harrell is gone, and Lou Williams is so key because that's a guy who can take ball handling duties and get you a bucket whenever you need it. And Kawhi, they're going to rest his way through the season. I trust that front office a bit more and that they can pull a trade. Like a guy like Iguodala could end up on this team. Trust the coach and Doc Rivers as well, who's, had success before. So I got the Clippers making the finals. And if you want to know my East pick and my champions pick, the 76ers.
Yep.
It's their year. And I think if you want to bet on a team to win the NBA title this year and you want to bet it early in the season and cheer it, it's probably smarter going Eastern Conference because it's the West just such a logjam that anything could happen. But in the East, I mean, especially if you like one of the two heavyweights in the East, it's like you got a 50-50 chance this team can just about get to the finals.
Yep.
And I mean, not 50-50. The 76ers are $3.25 to win the East, which is okay. But I would take the $9 that you can get for them to win the title. I think this is their year. Look, Simmons, he signed that mega deal. I think he takes that next step. I'm not saying he's going to come out and draining threes every night. I just mean I really admire him as a player, and I think he can get even more efficient, and he is a superstar player. He truly is. Like, no one really blinked when he got that contract. Embiid, I think, is going to be fitter this year, and that was, the big issue that he kind of wore out last season in the playoffs. Horford brings leadership, a toughness, and a guy who might chill through the regular season as well, but will, just add some metal to this team in the playoffs. And Tobias Harris in a bigger role. People underrate how good he is. And Richardson, the sneaky addition when they lost Jimmy Butler. You get a guy like Richardson, arguably going to fit into this team better three-point shooter. Yeah, and a wing player. They've got a couple other guys. This Steibel, who they're saying is like, the next Kawhi Leonard, just on defense at least. Ridiculous perimeter defender. So that's my pick. The 76ers beat the Clippers in the finals.
I had the same thing. I didn't have a winner, but I had the 76ers coming out of the East. Isn't it funny? Neither of us chose the Bucks, who are not far and away favourites, but they're sitting there at $2.50. Look, I just think the way that they, that way the teams the way that team is constructed, how heavily they lean on Giannis, and we saw what happened in the playoffs last year, just clogging up the lane, and he's driving into three people and just getting blasted there in the paint. I think teams are going to learn from that. I think it's going to be very tough for them to progress to the championship game. I like the 76ers as well. Look, you get rid of the cancer that is Jimmy Butler, but you fucking add Horford, like you said. And I think you made a good point in that Horford adds leadership, because that is what that team was severely lacking last year. You have young guys like Simmons and Embiid, and look, that they probably thought that Jimmy Butler could be the leader in the locker room. I don't think he was. He certainly wasn't. And Horford brings that. He knows what it takes to get it done. So I think that's a great addition. I think he's going to be perfect for that team. In the West, I know you won't agree with this one, Saka, but I have the Warriors coming out of the West. It's going to be a tougher deal because, they're not going to probably be in the top 4, depending on how early they get Clay back and depending on, how, what he looks like when he does get back. But when he is back, and I think he will be, they're saying Feb March.
It's if. They are not saying Feb March. His coach came out yesterday and said he might not play the season. So, as we said before, it's unknown. But I get
let's say
you're better off to bet them to win the title and get those 20-1 odds, those long shots, than you 100%. Would be to play their over-under, season over-under, where it's $1.90. And then if he doesn't come back, they might, win less than 50 games.
Yes, definitely. And look, like you said, you kind of do want to bet on those high variance teams to win the championship and a bit lower variance to win divisions and that kind of thing. So look, if Clay comes back and he looks great, that is a fucking good team. I know they're going to have to win a couple of games, away from home, in the West to make the title game. But, that is essentially their old championship team that they won 2 titles with. Steph, Clay, and Draymond, and you're adding to D'Angelo Russell, who can score, $30 on a nightly basis and go off and win you, 1 or 2
30 points
games.
As well.
What did I say?
Yeah, dollars.
Oh, $30, Jesus.
But I actually agree in that you look at, as we said, every team is kind of like a duo now. And if you just, say in a vacuum, who's got the best roster, and if everyone's healthy, you can still argue starting 5 of the Warriors can match with anyone, and Steph and Clay and Draymond, and especially with D'Angelo Russell, can match it with anyone. But that is a huge, red flag that Clay, we don't know when he's coming back, and 9 months you'd think would be a minimum, which would put him into April. I spoke about this before, but it could be later, and you're going to have a bit of catching up to do, and that there's so many other good teams in the West that will be a few wins ahead. So then they'd be on the cusp of the playoffs, and then you've got to question whether it's worth bringing him back. Don't forget, they brought KD back too early last year. He should never have played in the finals.
No, I know. That's all very sketchy.
And he snapped his ACL within
Yes.
a quarter of coming back. Like, they wouldn't do it to Clay, who has signed a long-term deal, unless he's 100% and they're confident and they're within, realistic chance. And going back to the East, we've both taken the 76ers, but just to touch on the Bucks, and I said at the start of this pod, like, they were probably the best team, the best team in the NBA was the Warriors. Once KD went out, the Bucks were probably the second best team in the NBA.
They looked unstoppable in the regular season.
They fell apart, and it was partly Bledsoe just shat the bed in the playoffs. Speaking of that, they've lost Brogdon, which is probably why I don't pick them to win the East. I think that's a really big loss, and they haven't added anybody. And you look at all these duos, but really for the Bucks, it is a one-man act in Giannis, and we'll get to MVP next. I mean, Middleton's okay and made an all-star team, but a lot of pressure on Bledsoe. But I wanted to talk about just possible trades. I mean, an injury to any of these teams throws a massive spanner in the works, right? But what can't underestimate is a trade that changes the title odds. So I was thinking, who are the best players in the NBA? And throw any out there once I kind of let you think about it. The best players in the NBA who aren't on contenders right now, but also aren't on their rookie deals. So guys like Luka, Devin Booker, obviously Zion, Karl Anthony Towns, they're not going anywhere because those teams are still keeping them. You're looking at guys that, the obvious choice is a guy like Bradley Beal.
Right.
If he ends up on a contender, and I'm looking at a team like the Denver Nuggets, can they make a deal work around a Gary Harris? You turn Harris into Beal, that's a big upgrade.
I'm surprised they didn't do anything in the offseason, to be fair.
That's still there to be made. A team like the Celtics, again, can they turn a Hayward into Beal or just add Beal? They've got the assets, the draft assets. I mean, a Kevin Love, does he find his way to the Blazers? Just speaking of the Bucks, could they not do a Godfather deal that centers around a decent contract that Bledsoe is on,
yes,
and a bunch of future firsts for Chris Paul? Now, Chris Paul makes ridiculous money, and nobody wants Chris Paul because the next 2 years he's making $40 million. I'll tell you why. Because if Chris Paul was on this Bucks team, he has never been on a team that was favourite to make the finals. I mean, for him, I would think he would come in motivated. I think he still might have enough petrol in the tank if he played on a team, and I think he'd fit into this team perfectly. You're basically just turning Bledsoe into Chris Paul, better three-point shooter, better playmaker. Like, Chris Paul's still the better player at this time. That's just something out of the box. I haven't heard anyone else say that. That's just my idea. Maybe his money is just prohibitable, but I know that Bledsoe's on good money. Like, if they could make that work. Blake Griffin, I mean, do Detroit move him if they realise they are an 8 seed at best? Like, would he swing the odds? Again, I would say like a team like the Celtics that lost Horford are a bit thin up front. Could they make a deal work for Griffin? That's why the Celtics are a bit of a sleeper. I think they're the third best team in the East, even if they don't move anyone. I think Kemba is going to do better than Kyrie last year. I like Tatum. I like Brown.
To do worse.
Yeah, that's right. And you got Hayward, maybe that injury was so traumatic it'll take 2-4 years.
Yes.
And Brad Stevens, great coach. And with the assets to maybe improve that team, you can't write the Celtics off either.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you. I just, going back to the Blake Griffin thing, I just think that if Blake Griffin is one of your 2 best players, you cannot win an NBA championship. Would you agree? And
if Drummond is one of your best players, you cannot either. Blake Griffin was like a top 3 player in the league around 2013, 2014. I mean, the Clippers, who knocked him out? Oh, they choked away a series against the Rockets that was unlosable. There was a couple of years where the Clippers probably should have made the finals, and that just didn't happen for them. And Blake's not quite the same player he was either. He's not quite as agile and athletic. But he still could be a difference maker. There's probably a couple of trades out there that we haven't even considered. I'm just saying that because we're talking about a lot of futures odds, but it can all change in one trade, as we've seen, in recent history.
Oh, you're right. And the Celtics would be, one of those teams because they do have so many assets. And I do think Kemba's going to do well in that system. You said better than Kyrie. I mean, Kyrie was just not the right fit for him there, obviously. And I'll throw this one at you, Jake, because we haven't talked about the Nets. How do you think Kyrie is going to fit in at the Nets? I mean, I'd say that, he can't do much worse or be, almost hated as badly as he was in Boston last year. So I do see improvement. I don't think the Nets are going to necessarily be contenders this year, that's for sure. But, I mean, if he can gel and have, a good time there and go into, the following season, healthy and loving life there, then that's going to be a contender once KD comes in.
100%. If you talk about in a pure vacuum, if everyone was healthy, you'd argue the Nets would be the favourites to win the title if they had Kevin Durant. But that's talking about how good Durant is. Now, Kyrie, I put him in the same basket as Jimmy Butler. And what you said before, if you're the problem in multiple places, there's a problem in multiple places, it could be you. He's kicking a stink up in Cleveland, I want out, goes to Celtic, this is way better. Got a real coach, I got better teammates. But then he was the problem there too. Now he goes to the Nets. So it's up to him to prove that he isn't, a distraction and a chemistry issue. I think they could be really good. I mean, essentially it's the same team, but you've turned D'Angelo Russell into Kyrie for this season, which is an upgrade if Kyrie's, got his head switched on and not, ruffling feathers.
Right.
And Karis LeVert was out for a lot of last year. I think he could be most improved player. I think that he's a really underrated wing scorer that if he plays a full season, this team will be even better. Spencer Dinwiddie, I really like him.
They play so hard.
Allen, the shot blocker, good coach Atkins. I have them as the 4 seed. So to answer your question, I don't think they can win the title, but I do think they're going to go really well this year.
Fair enough. And speaking of, people doing well and not doing well, do you have a pick for MVP, Jacob? Maybe, a normal-ish sort of odds pick, and then if you've got a flyer there, throw it at us. If you don't, then don't. But, let me know.
I'll pick the same guy that I picked last year, and I think you agreed with me last year. Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yep.
I hate to go chalk, but I actually am surprised you can get $3.80. I've looked up and down. I didn't want to pick him. You do get a bit of voter fatigue. You've got to remember this is a subjective voted award, and sometimes the best player of the year or the true most valuable doesn't even win it. You've got to factor that in. But what it comes down to for me is basically every good team has a duo and his team doesn't.
Yeah, you're
so
absolutely right.
he truly is the man. Every other team, it's like the players could split votes.
I mean,
I
you
think
have
you
Middleton, but he's under a caliber of
yeah,
the other
no one,
duos,
he's
you
not
know?
in
Like,
MVP discussion or
yes.
superstar discussion. I think you pretty much have to be a top 2 seed in your conference to be MVP. Usually they just look at who are the best like 2 teams in each conference and then take like the best player from those sides and say who's had the best year. The only exception would be like
Russ.
when Oklahoma City, was 6th and Russ had a historic year. So if Steph Curry, for example, shoots 36 points a night and on like 50, 40, 90 or something, he absolutely can win it. But I think everyone else, like, it's a question mark of how many wins they're going to get. And you got like Kawhi's going to be sitting out, getting like load management.
Yes.
You got Nuggets and Jazz, I think could be top 2 seeds, but they don't have that like MVP caliber guy on there. Even the 76ers split votes because they've got a pretty stacked lineup. So for me, Giannis is my first pick, and I actually do think it's value at $3.80.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, Giannis, you're right. Like, a lot of these teams have, 2 scoring threats, and with all the additions, they've made, like, I know that, obviously James Harden, they've added Westbrook there, and I think, with last year, I mean, James Harden was right up there in the MVP voting, but Chris Paul was not as dominant, probably not as going to take as many shots, as Chris Paul. Oh, sorry. Chris Paul didn't take as many shots as Russell Westbrook is going to probably this year, so that's going to take away from Harden's stats there. LeBron and Anthony Davis on the same team. I don't think either of those players can win MVP unless there's an injury there. Same with the Clippers side as well. So I think you're bang on the money with Giannis there at $3.80. I know that it is chalk. If we're talking...
And he's really young.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not expecting him to get a lot better or magically be able to shoot threes, but there's no reason to think he can't keep improving a little bit more in the trajectory he's on. And like we said, like last year, Budenholzer came in, good coach. They're going to win a lot of games. They play at a high pace. The numbers will be there for him. And I think he will be dialed in, and he's not going to sit out a lot of games. So it is not bad value. You're close to $4 for Giannis.
Yeah, definitely. If I'm talking a little bit of a smoky, I think I saw Steph Curry getting up towards double-digit odds. And
I saw him at $5 today. I think
was it only $5? Maybe
I think he might have been at 10, but he's just been bet in.
Fair enough then.
Yeah.
Maybe at 5, then it's certainly not worth it. I was just going to say, look, if you get a situation where, when Chris Paul went to the Rockets, everyone kind of said, "Oh, Harden's, his value is going to drop. He's not going to score as many points." I mean, he still won the scoring title, by far and away. And I was just going to say, if D'Angelo Russell ends up, taking a bit of a backseat role and more of a facilitator role, then you could easily see Steph scoring 30 plus on a nightly basis, and that.
Well, the way you can look at that is he won back-to-back MVPs and obviously had Clay like alongside him the whole year that he did that. So Russell would kind of fill that Clay role. It doesn't mean that Steph can't eat. He still gets enough to put up great numbers. You spoke about Davis and LeBron like cancelling each other out.
Yep.
But if I had a second choice,
it would be Davis over LeBron.
I'll go for
right?
Davis.
Yes.
Yeah, it would. And $9. And my logic is because they will need to lean on him if they're going to have a great year. Like LeBron is 36 years old, and we've talked about him being fresh. But also think like to coax Davis over to LA, he had to kind of big him up and say, look, I will let you have the spotlight. Like Davis has never won an MVP for the caliber of player that he is, where LeBron's won a handful. So he can kind of big Davis up. And I know that people kind of think, well, the best player will, be seen out on the floor. But LeBron can do things like let Davis have a few extra shots, especially even give him a few clutch shots where there's going to be a handful of games where it's 110 all through the season. And if LeBron lets Davis have that shot, and if you miss, well, you go to overtime or you lose the odd game here, no one worries. But you get a few of those sports center highlight moments, and it'll depend on the way LeBron works the media and talks about, oh, Davis, I think he's the best player in the league right now. Voters do like that new car smell. Like Davis is a guy who's never won it before, as you spoke about Russ, Harden, and even Giannis. There's that risk, and Steph, like guys that have won before. There is a case to be made that Davis, who also will be killing it on defense and probably in the discussion for Defensive Player of the Year, could actually still get in the discussion, even though he's teammates with LeBron. I wouldn't rule him out.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, mate. Like, I know you probably ask most people, are you going to choose LeBron or Anthony Davis out of that team to win an MVP? And most people would probably say LeBron. But I think everything that's been coming out of LeBron's mouth throughout the entire preseason, saying that he's going to, he wants the team to run through AD. He's going to try and feed AD as much as possible. And even in today's game, you see in certain situations where LeBron almost forcing the ball into AD in the post. When it wasn't on. I know the couple of times he got a turnover from that, but that kind of just shows that he is trying to feed the shit out of AD. He's going to want to make him, feel involved, feel happy that he fucking made the decision to come to LA. I think if you're going to choose one of those two, it certainly would be.
And it's a regular season award. So, I mean, we all know deep down it's LeBron's team. And in the playoffs, it can be a different story. And LeBron has done this
100%.
before. He has chilled through the regular season. And then he does find that other gear. And we've seen it like the years where he's dragged his team to the finals and the Cavaliers and stuff like that, even once Kyrie left, where he had no right to, but he finds that extra gear in the playoffs. But it's a regular season award, and Davis could have the numbers and the resume to do it if the Lakers, like as we said at the start, if the Lakers do end up winning the Pacific Division.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think, going back to what you originally said, I think, you are bang on the money with Giannis. He's young. He's got less injury risk than, both of those players that we talked about on the Lakers, both the players that we're talking about on the Clips. And he's just going to get, bulk minutes and bulk points. And at the end of the day, although, the voters do look at, how the team does to an extent, they also look at the stats. And, I mean, Giannis' stats are going to be a joke come the end of the season because he is by far and away the number one option on that team, as opposed to a lot of teams that have added a second player. But it should be an epic season. It's one of those seasons, like you said, Jacob, where there are a bunch of teams that have two superstars. There's no one far and away absolute favorite to win this thing. I am gonna throw. I've got a couple of quick fire questions here for you. I know that you mentioned it earlier. If you had to make a pick for a scoring title, I think I saw some odds. They might have removed them now that the season started, but let's just see, just from your perspective, who do you, if you had to choose someone, win the scoring title? Steph Curry, fair enough. What I was going to say? Bradley Beal. I think I saw him at like $15. There's no one else on that team. He's just signed a multi-million-dollar deal. He's going to get all the fucking ball on that Washington Wizards team that is absolutely devoid of talent. And getting him around 15 seems decent to me.
Yeah, I don't mind that.
I know I threw this at you before, but obviously I have an easy answer. Well, we got your answer previously pretty much. Who's scoring more points in the season, LeBron or Anthony Davis?
Yeah, I'll take Davis on that one to get the more points, and LeBron can, add a couple extra assists per game.
Completely agree with you. And I'll throw this one at you. You get the Clippers and the Lakers to win the championship, or everyone else. Who are you taking?
Yeah, it's not close. You take everyone else, because if you take the Lakers and Clippers, you've made it 50-50 at best to have a team that makes the finals. I mean, there's a 50-50 chance that a team that makes the West, that wins the West, is not from Los Angeles. It could be, as we've spoken about, it could be Utah, could be Denver, could be Houston, or even you like Golden State as well.
Yep.
And then even if they get to the finals, you've got, I reckon, 50-50 chance that like a team like Milwaukee or the 76ers that we like could win. So I know that it wouldn't probably be 50-50 odds, but I heard someone saying if you get like $1.70 that the winner didn't come from California. And I thought that's pretty good value.
Seems about right, because I think the Lakers were $4 or something to win the West, and I think the Clippers are like $3 or $3.20 or something. So you're absolutely right, and you're right. I would take the field as well for sure on that one. Just given the injury risk and stuff to those two teams, and just how stacked the West is, and then obviously you're getting one of those good East teams that you still have to beat in the championship game, mate. That'll do it from my side. Did you have anything else you wanted to leave with the punters before we get out of here?
Get under the mark, but that was a good chat about the NBA. We're very excited, and if we see any value through the year, of course, we will share it in our group and on our app.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. So make sure you tune. Thanks again for tuning in. I know it went for about an hour, but hopefully you got some good info there, can make some good wagers throughout the week and throughout the season. And make sure you tune into our NFL pod. That's going to be Saturday morning, 10 a.m. Queensland time, to break down Week 8 in the NFL. But that'll do it from us, guys. Have a good one. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you on Saturday morning.